So I will start recording, and now I will continue with our questions. So start by just giving a brief overview of your role. We heard a little bit about what your role is, but talk through some of the specifics about your current position and work with your respective companies. So I will leave it up to you all to decide who you would like to start with.
Kennedy, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in. So as Kertesha mentioned, I am a pharmaceutical sales representative, and I was fortunate enough to land a job in Knoxville where I was born and raised, and really love the Knoxville area. That's part of my territory as well as east of Knoxville. And so I said territory because I've got a pretty large one, and basically what I do each day, well, I'll say what I did in the normal world and then like kind of how that's transitioned into virtual world. In the normal world, I would get in my car, drive around to my territory each day and meet with doctors, whether that be through short meetings, lunch meetings, coffee meetings, all the above, any way to get in front of them to speak with them about our products and our drugs, and more importantly, who the appropriate patients are for our drugs. And so this job, I think one of the things that I've learned, and we'll probably get into more of these questions later, is it's really about cultivating relationships. And I'm sure you guys have heard that associated with being successful in sales, but that's what I do every day, is cultivate relationships and learn the needs of my customers in order to provide value. And so I spend the most of my time doing that. Now there's obviously, with any other job, there's some admin work along with that. I work on a team as well, and we collaborate on ways to make our businesses more successful. But I very much see what I do every day as managing my own business. So a lot of what I do is really taking ownership of that business mindset and thinking about ways to grow that. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea of what I do. Now, what I do in virtual world is the same thing, but just virtual. I try to get my customers to engage with me via virtual interactions. We've got certain platforms that allow us to do that. So we can still provide them things like samples and resources and all the things that we would be taking to their office in person to help their patients get off to a good start with our medications and to help educate them about maybe new indications, new label updates, things like that. And like I said, most importantly, help them see the kind of patients that we're advocating for. So same mission, just a little bit of a different and sometimes more challenging platform, but we're rolling with it. So that's myself. What about you, Jen?
Yeah, so that's a great introduction. My name is Jenn Glabicky. As Kertesha had said, I reside actually in Boston, Mass. I majored in sports biology, minored in sports nutrition. So strong science background for all of you guys on here that are arguing through your science classes and can't stand them. I promise you they'll pay off. I previously sold pharmaceuticals and also medical devices, but I've moved into more of an internal role as a global program manager for Waters Corporation. And for all of you that are thinking Waters Corporation just tests water, it actually it tests a lot of things. So we test cannabis. Some of you might be familiar with the Lance Armstrong doping scandal. Our company created the testing for that. So a lot of things, and then anything you can think of to test. If you want to see how much caffeine's in your coffee, we can test things like that as well. My role specifically now is doing the sales content and communication. So we use a platform called Salesforce.com, which helps track the sales and marketing success of the sales reps in the field. I personally develop content in all around the world globally with different languages, obviously, and making sure that it's appropriate for the sales reps and not just shelling the sales reps with anything. But in my medical device experience, I know that's kind of what we're focusing on more here today. Similar to Kennedy, it's on a grind every day, daily, that you'd be out there. I would be in the OR all day, every day, pretty much. And if I wasn't in the OR, I was prepping for or cleaning up from surgical cases. So it's just a quick intro for me. How about you, Miriam?
So hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Awesome. My name is Miriam, as Kertesha said, and I'm an immunology specialist for Janssen Biotech, which is a part of the Johnson & Johnson family of pharmaceutical companies. I've primarily call on immunotherapists, also gastroenterologists, and colorectal surgeons. I sell a immunotherapeutic biologic called ustekinumab, and it's for those patients that are compromised with ulcerative colitis disease and Crohn's disease. So my territory, I would say, pre-COVID keeps me pretty busy as far as travel. I go into northern Kentucky as far as Lexington, out west to Bowling Green, Kentucky, and then I go essentially through Cookeville, Tennessee, and the rest of eastern Tennessee. So right now we're in a work from home environment, and so like the others have said, virtual has been the way to go, and it's all about who can survive the transition to being effective and creating an impact and value ultimately at the end of the day for the patients we serve and the community and providers that we speak to every day, and educating them on the products that we have for them. And that's one thing that I love about what I do. I came from oncology, which is also essentially it's a very patient-focused field as well. And then you probably won't see me, but you can still hear me, hopefully. It's a very patient-focused industry as well. And then also my background was in consumer brands. So I've done a little bit of everything across several different market spaces, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you all for that introduction. Just a brief overview of kind of what you do. But I'm curious, how did you all first get interested in this field? What prompted that for you?
Yeah, so I mentioned this earlier when we were about to come on with you guys, but I have an athletic background. So I played sports my whole life. I played volleyball in college, and athletics and being on a team has been really my whole life. And so even when I was younger, when I thought about maybe what I wanted to do forever, I always envisioned it being something that allowed me to channel that competitive nature and to work on a team to achieve a common goal, and to be driven and to be able to really utilize those strengths that I had created my whole life through being on a team and being in competitive sports. And so honestly, it wasn't till about the end of college that I really knew that this is the field that I wanted to go in. My background is in exercise science, and so I wanted to stay in the athletic world for a while, but I realized that a lot of my studies and my degree would really help me in some other fields, specifically being pharmaceutical sales. And so that background I really used as leverage to think about broadening my options and thinking about where I could utilize those skill sets that I was passionate about, and really landed and got to narrow in on pharmaceutical sales. And so that's kind of how I got here. So this was the first job I got out of college. Worked a couple, little just money-making jobs while I was on the job hunt, because it does take, a little bit sometimes, but was able to jump into this role. And honestly, I felt like, it was everything in me to just keep my head above water for a while, because it was just such a new world. Really with any career, you're just learning so much. It's a huge learning curve. But I think it was so cool to see how much I fell in love with what I'm doing and how much I was able to channel that competitive nature and to be on a team that loves to win. And ultimately with a really great purpose of helping make patients' lives better. So I got to come into something that I love and I'm crazy about. That is so rewarding because it's serving such a great purpose. And so really fortunate to jump into this role so quickly out of college, learning a lot, still learning a lot. Sometimes I still feel very brand new, but that is just part of it. So that's kind of how I got here.
That's great. For me personally, as I mentioned, I started in pharmaceutical sales, very similar to Kennedy. I'm competitive, had played sports growing up my entire life, and wanted to find a way to really channel that and find a new team environment. I'll be very honest with you. I did not grow up wishing as a little girl that I would be a pharmaceutical sales rep. That's just not something that a lot of people say or do. But now I think it's becoming a normal thing for, colleges are offering, majors in pharmaceutical sales, which is great. And it's a great opportunity to really be out on your own, for those of you that may not be already. And for me, I just wanted to kind of spread my wings. I wanted to apply, again, my college background. I wanted to see in the competitive nature if I could hit my numbers for the sales goals that we set each quarter. So that was really fun. It's a good challenge. And, for me, I had always heard about medical device. So I moved into medical device 5 years after pharma experience. And for me, it was a whole different ballgame. It was taking that A&P background and really being able to apply it. So I hit my stride there and being in the OR, speaking to the doctors more so in the OR as they're scrubbing in for surgery versus, you know, in pharma where I went to their offices and tried to grab coffee or lunch, as Kennedy was mentioning. So it was a big change in pace. It's for the fast pace. It's not for the faint of heart by any means. And now with my current role, I'm able to help the sales without having numbers tied to me. I'm still doing sales type activities, just not with that numbers game that's attached to me. So for me, it's again, that interest of the drive and the competitive nature that's in it.
I would say the way I got into pharmaceutical sales was because I had just a science knowledge and love as a child all the way through college, majoring in biological sciences. I actually was that person that was determined to get a career in my degree of choice. And I did. I went to work for a company owned by 3E. It's also in Kingsport, Tennessee, and it worked in coordinates with Eastman Chemical Company. And it was a great opportunity to work next to scientists with, you know, everything from PhDs in chemistry and physics. And, you know, I was that person that loved to just share everything that I was doing at work and just communicating it after work to anyone I could talk to about what we're researching. And so that was one of the things I've always loved about science. So if you're that communicative person who maybe possibly maybe doesn't get completely or entirely fulfilled by working in a lab, that was me. And so for me, I suggested, you know, maybe getting into sales would be, you know, the right ideal fit for me. And it became a natural fit. A lot of pharmaceutical companies look for those types of majors who are science background majors. So it's definitely a great entryway into pharmaceutical sales, even if you weren't that person that majored in marketing or spent a lot of time discovering your interest in business, your business major.
Yeah, you all spoke to a little bit about like your academic journey and kind of, you know, some of your majors, like the coursework, like in the sciences, and I heard A&P, which for me was, you know, a tough class. So kudos to you, Jen, for that one. And then even spoke to some of your extracurricular activities and how that really impacted your journey and how, you know, all of that plays into what you're doing right now. And so I kind of want to pause here and see if our guests have any questions specifically for our panelists. I definitely have more questions, but if there's anything that you all are itching to ask or hear about, put it in the chat or, oh, thank you, Bridget. We have a question. So Bridget says, I am a kinesiology major with a minor in business administration. Would you say your roles focus more on business or the science side of the field? Thank you, Bridget.
Bridget, that is a great question. And I would very much say that it is a dance and a marriage between the two. You very much need strong skill sets in both business and both science background, not necessarily background, but just science knowledge and that confidence behind the science that goes into maybe the drugs you sell or the device that you're promoting. It is definitely equal in my mind. I think you've got to be very strong in both. And I'm the same as you. I had a degree in exercise science and a business minor. And I'm starting to see, you know, the more that I get tenured in my career, how imperative those two themes are to be successful. And you've got to constantly develop both of those throughout your career. So that's what I would say. That's a great question though.
I'll just add to that. For me, you know, I stayed very strong in sales once I was out of college, but I found it really important. Like you always hear the term sales and marketing put together. So for me, I took a little bit different path and went from the sales arena and did a director of marketing for a sports company to see how the two areas would meld together. I then transitioned from that into a clinical education role for Johnson & Johnson to see that business side and see how the inner workings happen. Because as you're a sales rep, you don't really know, you're not privy to everything that's going on inside. You're just kind of, and excuse me for saying this, but robotic in the sense of doing what internal tells you to do. So for me, I have to roll my sleeves up and understand, well, where are these decisions coming from? How are they being made? And having that business background is really going to benefit you, Bridget, to help you, make good decisions, help you with your business planning, if you do become a rep. And then, anywhere you go, it's great. So that's fantastic that you did, a mix of the two with a major and minor.
Miriam, I see you talking, but I think you're muted. There we go.
Okay. I was just saying, I totally agree. The marriage of a business savviness and the science background will help you get very far in the world of pharma, because obviously this is a business-oriented type of a career. However, when you start to get into some of the more specialized drugs, having that science, just that knowledge of like the very difficult conversations with communicating how a particular drug works therapeutically, especially with some of the new immunotherapeutics coming out. And also if you have a desire to go maybe into some oncology or things of that nature, to be able to showcase that you can discuss at that level with a physician, medical oncologist, there's several different types of specialty doctors out there. I think that kind of will give you that confidence to really take hold of those careers earlier, versus sometimes it may take you 15, 20 years within the industry to get there. So I think that you can leverage the two. And so just know that, you can do exactly what you set your mind to. And I think that's really part of sales. There might even be a lot of rejection, a lot of doors shut. You just really kind of have to go inside internally and try to figure out what you want. And that intuitive guide and compass will get you to where you want to be with any type of background of education, or maybe even some ongoing professional development that you choose to go into.
Yes, all really good points. And Jen even added in the chat a little more information. The science background really helps you kind of prepare for the type of training that you go through. And she mentioned it being a lot like a mini med school situation. So thanks for that. And thank you for the question, Bridget. Elizabeth also had a question. Hers says, I am also a biochemistry major considering pursuing a business minor. What would you all recommend in terms of gaining experience while you're in college? Let's start with Kim.
Particular as far as, okay, go ahead.
Am I up? Is that what you just said?
Yes.
Okay. Gosh, that's a good question. I would recommend really cultivating strong relationships with those professors in those classes who, I think we all have those professors who we just naturally connected well with and that we really learn well from their teaching style. I know that there were several throughout college for me that I learned so many foundational things because I did take the extra time to get to know them and to seek out extra times where I could like dig deeper into certain topics that maybe I was struggling with. And then get with peers who have, the same goals or maybe similar goals to, collaborate with them. I'm sure that I'm not totally sure about the University of Tennessee, but I know where I went to school at Tennessee Tech, there was an exercise science group of students who would get together for special events and things like that, we sprinkled throughout our college careers that looking back now, those things really did make a difference in how I better understood the science portion, and same for business. I think, like we said, it's definitely growing those two foundational pieces. And I think it's just looking for different ways, looking for those extra ways to really get that leg up while you're in your undergrad and maybe further into your graduate degree. Things like that, I think really do make the difference. So not sure if that totally answers your question, but that's what I'm thinking on the top of my head.
I think that's great, Kennedy. For me personally, when I was in college, I was really trying to think 5 steps ahead. And we don't always know what we want to do when we get out of college, right? But if you're looking in that way to explore that, me personally, I went into pre-med club and then I joined the rugby club. I mean, just to random things to keep me, and always going on the move. For you as biochem, if they have some sort of a pre-med or science club, it's a great way to connect with others that could or might not be in your field. And then again, I highly encourage you to join something that's way out of your comfort zone. Find those type of experiences and volunteer. I volunteer with the American Red Cross. They deploy me to hurricane, relief funds. I meet other like-minded professionals there that I never would have known existed. And people can help connect you. So when you're getting out of college, you'll be able to, reach back out for those connections as well. Just kind of focusing on those things and find internships. I know when I was at Johnson & Johnson, they had college internships that paid pretty darn good for a college internship. And it's a great way for you to get to know, internally sales things or even a group of things. They have a whole program that's set up for future leaders that will be, something you can rotate through different areas. So sales, marketing, finance, HR. So that's a great way as well to try and prep before you go into or go out of college.
I agree. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. As an employee, a current employee of Johnson & Johnson, if you all want to connect with me via email or on LinkedIn, you can do that. And I'd be more than happy to be able to share and relay any information that you would have or interest that you would have requested for internship opportunities. We also do that as part of our outreach and part of our credo. So that's a great way with internships. And then also any type of mentorship that you can partner with individuals who are currently in the field. They can possibly sometimes give you opportunities to shadow. I do know it does happen a lot, not a lot, but it does happen in the past in medical device sales. And maybe occasionally there might be some pharma that, pharma guidelines are a little bit different when it comes to that type of shadowing, but definitely a mentor would be a great way. And then on the side, also just try to develop whatever consultative skills that you can get from careers. Volunteering is absolutely wonderful. However, when you do a consultative type of a sales role, it really kind of gets you that impressive resume experience that you can communicate during an interview when you do land an interview for a pharmaceutical company. So consultative, I mean, maybe even it's, if it's medical sales, and, it could be healthcare insurance or life insurance, medical supplemental insurance, anything that's business to business and has several different touches before you get that sale, 7 to 10 follow-up touches and showing how you're able to, open an account, get it to a different degree of sales, and then be able to duplicate those processes over and over. Just creating value in whatever kind of sales role it is also a great way to demonstrate what you'll be able to do when you do get an offer from a pharmaceutical company.
Yeah, I think all three of you made some really good points about the types of experiences that students can start to engage in as they're in college. And Miriam, specifically, you hit on some pieces of mentoring and networking and really working those connections to help you gain the experiences that you need. So our next question is actually a tag team question. It's from Caitlin and Bridget is tag teaming onto that. They're interested in understanding how do you break into the field after you graduate. So Bridget added some information about she's in the middle of searching and is seeing that a lot of positions require either a number of years of experience or maybe qualifications that a lot of students might not have as they're leaving UT or leaving whatever institution that they're in. So what advice or what ideas do you all have about breaking into industry after you graduate?
I really like that question too, because I found myself in that position as well of it felt like I was kind of just hitting a wall every time I would apply for something because I didn't have that minimum expectation experience. But I think the biggest, and it might sound a little cheesy, the biggest piece of advice is to stay persistent and to continue to apply and continue to put yourself out there and make connections while doing so, because I think, and this everyone says it, but it's so true. It's all about who you know, and it's all about who you connect with and who you create those relationships with that can help you get to that next level. And so I know that even within pharma, there's a lot of entry-level positions that don't require experience. They may require experience in a certain background or a certain degree in order to, but I know that for our company, we really seek out young professionals. We call them early career professionals because I think there is a lot of value in what students right out of college can bring to the professional world, specifically in the pharmaceutical industry. So I would not get discouraged for, maybe not getting that interview you want, or for not having a job accepted, because there are things out there. It's just persistency and continuing to put your best foot forward, continuing to make connections to find that sweet spot.
I definitely agree with that, Kennedy. I think, again, network as much as you guys can. Find, people. It doesn't matter if you see someone on LinkedIn, like shamelessly connect in with people on LinkedIn. We're a virtual world now. So to take advantage of that is really in your ballpark. Caitlin, it's great. So breaking in out of college, I personally, I didn't know where I wanted to land necessarily. So I applied to pharmaceutical companies up and down the East Coast. And whenever one hit, I took an interview from. I told Kennedy I interviewed with her company. I've interviewed with some others, and each one is different. So get to know, if you want to work for Eli Lilly, where Kennedy is, get to know the culture. Reach out to Kennedy, ask her questions about it. Some Pfizer is much more militant, for example. So if you like a more regimented type of sales role, you can find out the culture of them and see what's going to fit you. I understand you guys want to find jobs. I was the same way, but you want to find your best fit as well, because you want to find something you're going to be happy with. For Bridget's question, that's the add-on, and looking at the medical device sales and pharmaceutical sales positions. For med device specifically, start looking up the difference between direct and distributor. You can sell direct for a company, or there can be a distributor company that can sell all different types of medical devices. I've worked for both. And I won't sway your decision on which I personally think is better, but I can tell you that a distributorship gives you a lot more opportunities to sell different types of equipment. And then also you get to hit bigger touch points as well. So you could be in ortho, you could be in spine, you could be wherever. And don't fret about having the Boston Children's Hospital, internship canceled. Look for other ways if you can volunteer in your local hospitals if you can, if that's safer. See if there's virtual ways that you can help them out. Be persistent, like Kennedy said as well.
And I would just add on that maybe a smaller specialty startup company, and maybe there's even startup medical device companies now, maybe not with medical devices much, but sometimes startup pharmaceutical companies are looking just for individuals to come on without those many years of pharmaceutical experience. So that might be an avenue. And then there's some contract companies out there who are looking for, they basically are kind of like a distributor of pharmaceutical reps for a pharmaceutical company. So you would be contracted with them. And a lot of times there's not a lot of pharmaceutical sales experience that you would need for those roles. I would definitely look into that. And then the networking in other nonprofits that are in, healthcare sales, or maybe possibly other professional women's organizations, or just professional organizations in general. I've been in this part of the Junior League of Knoxville for 10 years, and there has always been in my membership panels like these where you are able to network with individuals like ourselves from all different types of professions. And that's a great way to tap into those connections, to build those mentorships, and then those opportunities that you hear. And that kind of goes back to what the group has said. It is who you know, and that's the way you extend your network of who you know.
Can I just add to that, Kertesha? Just so I know we're talking a lot about like a lot, I'm sure our science majors here, but even if you're a music major, that shouldn't deter you from going for a role like this. It's just going to be a little bit more difficult. Like I said, it's kind of like a mini med school when you go through your training, but I think it's really important for everyone to understand that you can really mold yourself, and your first test is how you sell yourself in your interview, is how you'll be able to sell for your company. So I just want to keep that in mind as you guys start bringing these questions in. They're really good.
Yeah, and I think that is a good setup for our next question from Joseph, because he's asking a question about being, a nursing graduate and not really having, being a medical professional and having that experience, but not having the business degree, or maybe even the background or the exposure to add that piece to the mix. So what advice do you have for students or graduates who may be coming in with, very little or none of the experience that they're really looking for that is pretty typical of a rep or someone in the field?
I think I will take that one. It depends on your plan, Joseph, when it comes to whether you're going to go ahead and go into practicing nursing or not. I suggest that if you are going to start to be a nurse, a lot of times you'll get experience with drugs, and you will be a partner alongside doctors who are obviously prescribing these drugs. And then you'll find that pharmaceutical companies need nurse educators or things of that nature to speak to nurses or doctors about drugs. So that's another part of the pharmaceutical industry that's not really advertised, but that's a great way to possibly, do what you love, the science wise of helping and guiding other nurses or your peers, but you'd also be a part of the opportunity to go into the sales side if that was something you chose to do later on.
I would absolutely agree with what you just shared. Joseph, I think it may seem discouraging to you to not have the type of experience that a lot of us are talking about, but finding someone like you and being an applicant like yourself, you would be like hitting the jackpot because you do have those connections. You do have that experience of what our world looks like and what, the kind of people we talk to. You do have that perspective that is really useful for being successful in this job. And so I would say, do not be discouraged by lack of experience, because I think what you're doing right now, and if you do go on to practice nursing for a little while, that would give you even more leverage to be a really great candidate for a pharmaceutical sales position. We do seek out nurses to create relationships with, and those are a lot of times the decision makers in a lot of these things. They are our voices to healthcare providers about that education around our drugs. Many times we're not able to get in contact maybe with the provider we're trying to reach, but we can create a relationship with the nurse who then can be our voice. And so you having that experience and knowing, getting some visibility to what the nursing side looks like, I think would be a huge advantage for you because it does play such a big part of what we do on a daily basis. So I think that is great experience to bring to the table.
Yeah, I have to echo what all three ladies or all the two ladies are saying. I'm an EMT, and sometimes I notice when I go for different roles, they'll ask me about that experience specifically, and having that extra certification does give you a leg up. And if you think about it, Joseph, if you're put in the room with, me or you, they're going to ask you immediately, because if you are going to be able to sell, I mean, who's a doctor going to listen to? Me, who's just this like really hungry rep, or are they going to listen to the nurse that seems more educated and helps make those decisions with the doctor, like Kennedy was saying? So they do look for those, especially the roles Miriam was talking about. Those nurse educator roles are gold. I have friends that are in those roles and they love them. Some of them have gone into research. They realize that, yeah, I nurse and do nursing, but it's also something else that I can do and kind of broaden my horizon. So I think you're in a really key spot for sure. That's okay. I just saw Bryn's question. Sorry, guys. That's okay. I wouldn't recommend changing your minor to business. It's not something that you have to do. Like I was saying before, they're not going to immediately say, oh, sorry, poo-poo on her. She doesn't have a business minor. They're going to look to see you're the most well-rounded candidate and what they need. The roles that Kennedy, myself, and Miriam have gone for are all different in different capacities. And, Kennedy's experience is different than mine, and she can bring more to the table for that type of role. So if you start looking at what the company's looking for versus, just what you have in that sense of business, I think that's going to help you out. Like I said, you could be a music major, and I've seen people that have sold Xerox copiers for years and they've gotten into pharmaceutical sales and killed it. It's about your mindset and how hungry you are to win.
I think that's a good point, and this is just a bit of information from the university side of things. You don't have to minor or even major in something to get that experience. So for those who don't have, a business minor or don't have that space, in your schedule to really add in these extra courses, look at some student organizations to get involved with. Like Haslam College of Business has quite a bit of activities, organizations that you can plug into. I'm thinking specifically about every spring they have the ball pitch competition. And so that might not have anything to do with medical sales, but you're learning how to talk about either a project or a product that you're spending those few weeks developing. And that's a great way to show that you're starting to delve into the skills that you need to be successful in this field. So you're not limited to courses to get the experience that our panelists are talking about. But yeah, thank you for that question, Bren. I'm curious from our panelists, we've heard you all speak about what you love and why you got into the field. What's most challenging about your role?
I'll take this one. And this is an easy question for me right now, because I think it goes without saying, our current climate in our world today has made it a huge challenge to be successful in this job. It's presented a lot of hurdles and hoops to jump through. But I think this is where you're really able to leverage skills like agility and being flexible and being creative. So while it's been a huge challenge to get the job done virtually through a virtual platform, when we're used to every day being able to have these face-to-face, really sincere and genuine and compelling conversations with our healthcare providers, trying to recreate that virtually is really hard and it's tough. But I do think it helps you create those skills of finding creative ways, finding loopholes, finding different ways to make an impact. Because no matter whether we're working virtually or we're working in the field as usual, all that really matters is the value that you're bringing to the table. And when you are bringing something valuable that's going to make an impact in someone's life, and it's going to make a big difference in a patient's life, in my case, that urges healthcare providers to jump on a quick meeting with me or talk to me on the phone and pick up the phone and listen to our new indication or sign for samples through a virtual link. It's those things that when you bring value to the table and they recognize that about you when they see your face or hear your name, it doesn't matter what platform you're working over, that brings success. So it is a daily challenge, because there's so many days where I want to just bang my head against the wall because I feel like I've made no impact. But it is about continuing to press on and continuing to find ways to do things differently. So that's the biggest challenge I'm facing right now. So I know that's probably similar to some others, but let's see what you guys have to say.
Yeah, actually, Joseph just asked you, what is the most rewarding part of your position? So do you mind adding that in, Kennedy?
Oh, for sure. Sorry, I'm not looking at the chat right now.
That's okay.
Most rewarding. I've hinted at this. I would say two things. I love to win, like shamelessly love to win, love to be at the top. If there's a competition, like I'm finding every way to win it. So that is like my motivator for sure in doing well in this job. I would say an equal motivation and rewarding feeling is, again, knowing that what I am trying to speak with providers about on a day-to-day basis is impacting patients' life in a huge way. And it's making a massive difference in the way that they live, and it can potentially save lives. And so knowing that I'm waking up and doing that every day, and I'm potentially really changing someone's life, whether I feel it or no matter how frustrated I get with what the challenges that we just discussed were, that is so rewarding, knowing that I hear a success story of like, I get a doctor on a phone and he's saying, hey, your drug actually gave it to a patient and they're doing so well on it. And I'm so glad I made that decision. Thank you for telling me about that. That feeling to me is priceless. It is that same at the top winning feeling. So that is the most rewarding part for me, is truly making a difference, a tangible difference.
So I would say that what's challenging about this industry, and then I'll go into what's rewarding, is a little bit of what was just said, but it's really when you're finally engaged virtually in these deeper conversations and you have access to a doctor and you are banging your head and trying to change maybe his daily habits of how he prescribes, and you have a very specialized drugs with maybe some other challenges as far as how to bring it on board for a patient in need. And you covered all your bases and you're just trying to change his habit. At our company, I have about 6 other partners that work with me. And, you know, it's knowing how to be able to bring these other layers of people into the mix in a conversation and being able to still get the goal done. So whether it be a medical science liaison, whether it be a nurse navigator, whether it be your field reimbursement access specialist, whether it's your academic rep, we have so many different partnerships that we have to be able to manage. You know, I feel like I serve as the quarterback in a lot of these things. And then at the same time, I'm trying to, you know, keep the team running, you know, with my daily, you know, relationship with that particular doctor. So I feel like that can be challenging. However, the most rewarding part is when that particular doctor says, hey, I talked to your medical science liaison. He gave me everything I needed. We got the patient started. And then you hear a success story, like was just said. You know, I can tell you about, you know, just currently a doctor telling me that a 60-year-old woman with Crohn's disease who had not ever been to see her grandchildren in person. And this is 30 years of having Crohn's disease. And it was because she just could not sit in a car without needing to go to the restroom. She could not get on a plane. She did not have the confidence to do so. And then so when you're able to have that doctor go ahead and try it on a patient that they are just really just don't know how they're going to respond, and they tell you, you know, she actually went to go see her grandchild, her grandchildren. They were in Texas. This was here. It was actually in Kentucky. That type of, you know, success is why we get out of the bed to do this job every day. So although it may be challenging and it may take some time, I'm not going to just say you're just going to be successful right away in pharmaceutical sales, just like you might not be successful getting in right after college. But if you do your work, you do the work, and, you know, I think I read somewhere, you know, a millionaire has failed 7 times in some businesses before they even hit goal with that business and get their first million. That's exactly what's challenging and rewarding all at the same time.
Yeah, so for me, I would absolutely say that like the biggest challenge when I was in med device was expect the unexpected. You never knew what was going to happen next. And you had surgeons that were adding surgeries or cases on last minute. It would be 2 a.m. You'd get a call, you know, saying there was an emergency case. And that's a pain, right? That's a big challenge. In my current role, I would say dealing with that unhappy customer, right? I mean, nobody wants to have anybody that doesn't like what you're bringing to the table. And so I find the greatest reward in that is when I do turn a difficult surgeon or doctor, or even now a sales rep in my current role, to be happy with what I'm bringing to the table. I've had multiple instances where people are like, I don't have any faith in you. I have no clue what you're bringing here. I don't want to talk to you. See you later. And that's the person I salivate to talk to again, because you have to like look inside yourself and, you know, use that emotional intelligence. Gee, what could Jenn Glabicky do better to go into that next call with this person? And it makes it way more rewarding in the end when you do end up winning them over. I've had surgeons that have done that. They said they purposely were just being mean to see if I would stick through it. You know, I sat there, I had them throw things at me in the OR. You know, I mean, it was not fun, but at the end, I ended up being that rep that they could count on because I did what was best for the patient. And in whether you're pharmaceuticals, med device, any of my roles now, the number one, who's the most important person, number one person in the room, it's the patient. It's not the doctor, it's not their staff, it's not you, it's the patient and what you can do best for them. So that'll help you get through your challenges when you continue to hyper focus on that, you know, and it makes it more rewarding.
These have been some really good questions. Please keep them coming in the chat. I would love to hear about what are some common misconceptions that either people say about the work that you do, or just like maybe even ones that you held before you got into the field. So talk to our audience about what people get wrong about med sales and everything in between.
Yeah, so I'll take this one. So for medical device and pharma, I don't know if you ladies have experienced it. For a female perspective, I constantly get, well, they just hire pretty young women. That's all that they want for a pharma role. So that's a common misconception, because if people really knew the brains that sat behind, you know, our panelists today, they would understand what we really are bringing to the table. We were the best person for the position, and there was a reason for that. So, you know, people are going to beat you down, and they're constantly going to say, well, you probably don't deserve the role. You may not have a business background, or you don't have a, you know, science background. But it's what you've done and how you can sell yourself and overcome any of those objections. You're going to hit hurdles. People are always going to be out for you, but that means you're doing something right, because they want to be like you. So.
I would say ditto, 100%. That was exactly what was on my mind too. I think that was a big misconception that I even heard a lot coming into this role was, oh, well, there's a reason you got this job. And it was a constant effort to say, no, I got this job because I was the best person for the job. I was the absolute best person to be in this position. And having that mindset every day, I think really helps overcome maybe those objections that you hear. I think another common misconception is that, well, you're not really making a difference. You're just getting paid for people writing scripts for you. I mean, and they're not even doing it for you. They're just writing scripts and you're benefiting from it. That's not true. We are in a very competitive field, and there's a lot of products for our physicians to decide between. And a lot of times, if not most of the time, their decisions rely on the education they're getting from reps, the resources they're getting from the reps, the way that the rep has intentionally cultivated a relationship with them to make sure that their patients are getting the best medication. And just like you said, Jen, it really is a patient-centric mindset that you've got to have. And I think when a provider recognizes that, they recognize that you're there for the right reasons, and you are there not only to make money and not only for your own agenda. While it's okay to be competitive and it's okay to channel that, you're there primarily so that the patient gets the right medication. And sometimes that's not your medication, and sometimes that's not what you have to bring to the table. And being able to recognize that gives you even more respect from them. So I really do think it's about identifying that right patient and knowing that you are there for a reason, and you're not just benefiting from, no effort and, maybe riding around dropping off samples, being a UPS woman or man, giving samples to each office. That is not the case whatsoever. It is very much the content and the quality of what you bring to those relationships that do make you successful.
I can add on, but the only thing I would say that's not said is that we operate under healthcare compliance laws as well. So everything we do has to be of the most integrous types of interactions. There are things that we cannot say. There are rules that we have to follow by. And then I've just been one of those individuals that throughout my career in pharmaceutical sales, I have not ever sampled a drug because of the types of drugs that they are. So these are very serious conversations that we have with physicians, pharmacists about how to get these drugs into the hands safely of a patient. So because they're also, these are drugs that are, sometimes toxins because they kill and destroy everything bad to get to what's good. So we have to be very careful with what we say, very careful with what we write, and then conduct ourselves in a way that's going to give us credibility.
We got a question in from Bridget, and this one says she knows a lot about medical sales roles and pharma sales, and the work is often remote. Would you say that although your job is very independent, do you still do a lot with your company and interact with your coworkers? So it sounds like, let's kind of give us a day in a life, maybe what it typically is, but also how that's changed in terms of interacting with your coworkers and the people that you work with now during COVID.
Yeah, I'll jump on this one.
I would say I didn't interact.
Oh, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Well, I would just say real quickly that I didn't pre-COVID interact with a lot of coworkers, primarily because I've always had such extensive territories where I would travel overnight 3 to 4, 6 times per month. So I think that's also something that you might want to evaluate when it comes to your role. Do you want to be, where, you have to make a lot of solo decisions? You also are responsible for huge amounts of territories, and, that's a little bit more of a management in itself. So there are a lot of responsibilities that come when it comes to traveling and being, your only coworker. You might have some phone calls and some emails, but a lot of times you're doing it on your own. And I think some of the others might have some other perspective though with that.
I totally agree with that. I think there's a lot of self-accountability and self-discipline that has to be had in these kind of jobs, because you are by yourselves a lot, and you are making those decisions that really speak to your integrity and your character, because a lot of times nobody's looking and nobody's watching what you're doing. And I think that's an extremely important part of the job. But however, I do work with a lot of other people, and I think that looks different between different divisions of different companies that you work for, what that dynamic with others and with what teams look like. But I have a partner who I work with in my territory. Everyone on my team has a partner because our territories are so large to tackle by themselves. But even throughout that partnership, you're not with somebody in the car every day. You have your own mission and you collaborate on ways to grow your business. And then collectively, you collaborate on ways to grow, in our case, our district. And so our district is made up of all of our different territories. We've got about 10 territories. And so I do feel that team sense and that kind of family sense, because I am talking to teammates on the phone between breaks and while I'm driving each day. And I love that. And I think part of that is it's what you make it. You could be that type that, doesn't, talk with your team a whole lot or doesn't want to be involved with other parts of the company. But it makes it so much better when you do. So outside of sales and being in the field every day, I'm involved a lot with recruiting, which is part of the reason why I am on this panel. So that is something I really love to do, as well as I'm a liaison for early career professionals in our company. And so that's students like myself who came right out of college, who are considered those early career professionals. And we've got a community where we talk about the challenges that we face, and we do fun things like virtual happy hours and things like that, that really just create that sense of community. That do give you that outlet for cultivating relationships within people in your company. So I think it's definitely a little bit of both.
For me in my different roles, so pharma, similar to Kennedy, I had counterparts. Actually, there was 5 of us total for our territories. So we had to talk quite a bit because we had to work on our call plans and how we were going to call in the doctors. For my medical device role, I did still have a lot of interaction with my counterparts. And I don't think any virtual thing would have affected that, because surgery, right? I know they halted a lot of them, but you do speak to your counterparts to see if the right medical device equipment is in the OR at a certain hospital, whether you cover that hospital or your partner does. It is a big team effort. And in my current role, from when pre-COVID to now, I saw my counterparts every day, sometimes ad nauseum. They'd pop up over my cubicle and just to say hi. And it's that feeling of being around someone that we all probably miss. But now I'm on Zoom and Teams all the time. So they still see my ugly mug on the screen, whether they like it or not. They're not getting rid of me. So yeah, there is a big team aspect, whether you're remote or not.
Yeah, and I think that's an important part of work that I know I didn't think about this when I first was starting in my first professional role, but thinking about what your work environment looks like, and whether that's you're pretty independent, you're working pretty much by yourself all the time, or you have coworkers and you have that interaction of a team, all of that is really important to think about as you consider not just a career path, but specifically where you want to work. So I'm curious, how does your role, or how does kind of what you do allow for other parts of your life? I don't like to say work-life balance because I don't think that's really a thing, but how does what you do for work really play into the things that you do outside of work? We'll start with Miriam. I'm getting better at this part.
I would say that, one thing about my job, I really, really love helping other people. And I do that with so many nonprofits, even to this day. I have served on so many boards. I'm an advocate for Street Hope Ministry, where I help to recruit other individuals to, be aware and know the awareness of the human trafficking in our East Tennessee area. I have been a part of so many mentoring organizations where I'm always looking for individuals that I can have maybe a monthly check-in phone call with, to be able to, see how they're progressing towards their goals. I feel like, having all of these conversations and, opportunities to help other people, even when you're working professionally and balancing that with your own, home life, is just going to make you more well-rounded when it comes to your professional life altogether. I just think you need to have all of these different things that you're doing outside of just work. I think that these can be fun. There's always, if you're thinking, I don't know if I want to join an organization, I have another thing to do. Don't just do it because you want to have it on your resume. Really do it because you want to get some experience out of it, because you really never know where a lot of these opportunities will lead you, in the midst of a pandemic. I feel like, not everyone has had a successful story like the three of us working for a pharmaceutical company during this industry. Sometimes there's some uncertainty in our industries, and you don't know whether or not you will be with a company for just a lot of years. So I feel like being well-rounded and knowing how to maneuver and still make time for your family, obviously, and be at home and have time with your friends. But I do think it's going to help you be able to have something to fall back on in the midst of having to, get through some change, throughout.
I definitely second that, Miriam. I think that finding things outside of work to fill your cup is so important, because you can't pour out of an empty cup, right? And what we do very much on a daily basis is serving other people. And so it's really important, I think, to have that balance and to have those things that help us recharge and get energized. And I know for my company, Eli Lilly, they really do encourage that strong work-life balance. They encourage shutting it down after 5 o'clock, being with your family, being with your friends, finding those things that make you truly feel like you are being energized and you're ready the next day to bring it your all. But I will say that there are several days, especially in this new virtual world that we're all working in, there's a lot of days that require a little more and require a lot more sometimes of, working past that structure. And I think it's all what you put into it. I think, maybe and I'm in the boat right now of working towards promotions. And so that naturally requires a lot more than my daily job duties. And I think that, even within that, I still see that I am able to have that separate work-life balance and have time to do the things that I want to do. I can only speak for Lilly, but I think it's true for a lot of other companies. They are very rewarding as far as giving you time off and letting you recharge with your families over holidays and vacations and things like that. Because they really do believe and invest in helping us put our best foot forward. And so I would say I have an incredible work-life balance, and I'm so blessed to have that. And it's very encouraged, and you never feel guilty for it, because it's very encouraged that that's embedded in our culture, is that culture of really being your best self and doing what it takes to bring your best self to the table.
Yeah, so my company, I'm a little bit different. I don't have a good work-life balance. I will shamelessly admit it. And reason being, I did before the pandemic. Now that the pandemic is in place, time I used to commute, they're adding extra meetings on at 7 a.m. instead, or they'll add a meeting on at 5 when I would normally be driving home, because they figure, what is she doing anyway? God forbid I had a life, right? So for me, and kind of doing that work-life balance of, taking time to myself, that gets tough. So I mentioned earlier being an EMT, and I actually found, helping and using that to volunteer. We opened a COVID patient only hospital down in the seaport of Boston. So for weekends, I went and worked 12-hour shifts down there, and it was my escape and my getaway. People thought I was nuts for it, for adding more onto my plate of quote unquote work. But then you see that rewarding piece where how many COVID patients did I see that actually got to walk out, ring the bell, and get better. So finding, again, your sweet spot. Miriam talked about things. Don't just do it for a resume builder. Do it because you're passionate about it. And I echo what Kennedy said, having that work-life balance. I don't know, I'm not married, I don't have kids yet, but people seem to prey on that in certain companies, in the sense that they think, oh, well, she doesn't have any responsibility to go home to. And that's not necessarily true. So making sure that we, set our boundaries to be able to do things to kind of, widen our horizons. I think that's really important. And looking for you guys were talking about the different majors that you have. Look for something, the biochem majors, you guys would get eaten up at my company, because we look for scientists, we look for people that, have that strong science background. So start looking for things like that in the internships in that avenue, if that's, you want to put your major to use.
Thank you. Joseph had another question. He would love if y'all could talk about a hurdle that you had to overcome and what you learned from it. Jenn, you just finished, so why don't you kick that off?
Yeah, that's a great question, Joseph. Thank you for asking that. So I've had a few different hurdles I've had to overcome, not just necessarily starting. The starting out phase, I mentioned I just kind of like machine gun approach, went up and down the East Coast to try and apply to different companies. But then, Kennedy and I were mentioning this, but really proving yourself. And you can tell someone, no, I'm really good. Like I have nursing background, and I have all this experience, Joseph, but then what can you do? Show me. It's going to be your actions. And it really took a lot of grunt work and working hard to show people and not tell people. I didn't waste my time trying to tell people how awesome I would be at the role that they were going to give me. I'd kind of smile inside and be like, oh, I'm going to eat this challenge up. This is going to be awesome. So it's all how you kind of present yourself. And I mentioned again earlier that emotional intelligence, that was a big hurdle for me. I didn't have any emotional intelligence when I started with my roles. I just was this young, hungry girl that wanted to go out there, prove myself, couldn't understand why people weren't being receptive to me. But then understanding that EI piece was so helpful. In my career, I've dealt with sexual harassment. I've dealt with things that, people shouldn't have to deal with, but they do. And how do you come out on the other side successful in an even better spot? So, a true believer, you're not given anything in life that you can't handle. So it's just there to make you a little bit better.
I would say, when you think about challenges or hurdles, I feel like it's a lifelong thing, and I'm not saying that to discourage you, but it's really what you do, and it's cliche to say what you do at the end of the day. From early on, I moved around as a kid, and I went to a new elementary school every 3 years, all the way through high school. The longest I've ever lived anywhere was after I graduated from University of Tennessee and stayed in Tennessee. And it was just really, really difficult, but at the same time, it gave me that thick skin that I needed. And then when it came to rejection, which really is a lot of pharmaceutical sales, for my story, I started with an oncology specialty company that no one had ever heard of. And it was an expansion territory. I didn't have partners. And in oncology, there were about 150 drug reps calling on maybe just the 6 offices that are in the city. It's not like primary care where there are hundreds of primary care doctors. And I would literally cry. I will admit I did in the beginning, because it was just so cutthroat. They would not even let me in the front door. They were like, oh, we're booked for the next, 18 months. And so I would, have to find ways to, get into front of these offices. And once I got a opportunity to, like, let's say it's a lunch visit, you only get 1, maybe 2 per year in that industry. It's not often. You have to be able to earn the respect of that doctor right there. And, sometimes with certain drugs, I sold a REMS drug. A lot of the oncology drugs means that you have to take a certification to sell the drug. The doctor has to take a quiz. He has to study, he has to take a quiz, he has to pass. So does the pharmacy. There's just a whole lot of different things. And of course, these offices had to do that for my drugs that they never heard of. And then once that happened, I would have to get the medication approved. And they're like, are you kidding me? $60,000 for one script, And so, how is my patient going to afford that? And so once I'd gotten so far along in the sales cycle to say, I'm sorry, we're not going to do this, and I needed to prove myself and have some sales, or else, they're going to cut my territory. I had a lot of days where I had to really, really think outside the box. And that's where I say, whatever challenge it is in life, whether you had to move around, or you might have had to be the only person in a room, at a classroom or organization, any type of group environment where no one knew you, and you had to find a way to make yourself heard, and you had to find a way to be able to ultimately do the job that you were there for. I think that is really, a part of just, life and being able to accomplish everything that you're pursuing. So these hurdles happen early on. They still will happen, but that's the one. I will tell you guys, it took me about 4 months before I got my first sale with that particular drug. So it was really, really hard. And then to even think about getting scripts, like refills, that was just not happening in that particular part of my that industry. So, you know, it happens, but I think it will make you stronger. It's like a muscle. You know, you start working out and you know, your muscles get sore and you're like, oh my God, I'm not doing this today or the next day. But then what if you did do it the next day and then you got more comfortable and you started to get stronger, and then all of a sudden you notice it's a habit that's been formed and you're doing it. I think that's the way hurdles work as well.
Totally agree with you. And I love your stories that you share. Really impactful. So a hurdle story for me would be something I experienced earlier on in my career about a year ago. I say earlier on, I've only been here 2 years, so it's early to me. But early into my career, I was faced with running my territory for about a quarter by myself. My partner had accepted another role in a different division, and they weren't going to hire for my counterpart for a whole quarter. And so that seemed extremely daunting to me, being what felt like brand new into this role, still had so much to learn, still do. Really felt like I relied heavily on my partner's leadership and running our territory. And I just felt like I'm screwed. Like this is going to go downhill. And not to mention, we had performed really terribly the quarter before. So I was sitting in one of the lowest spots in our district in this situation. And I thought, okay, so I'm like the newest, youngest one on the team. It would be expected if I didn't turn this around, right? Like it would be okay in a sense if I didn't perform, because I was so new, didn't really know what I was doing, just lost my partner, was running the second largest territory in our district by myself. I think I could be okay and like not really get my wrist slapped if I didn't do well. So I had that mindset for a hot second. And then I thought, wow, this is a hurdle that I can really choose to approach in a different way. So I did that. So every day that quarter, I hit the ground running, and I was running to and from different cities in my territory a lot of days past that 5 o'clock hour that I mentioned, to try to service my customers and to try to grow my business, to essentially do the work of 2 people by myself for an entire quarter. There was many days where I thought, okay, this isn't even worth it. Like nobody expects me to do well. Like, of course, like I've been dealt a horrible like hand of cards here, but I'm just going to keep going, because what if I don't? What if I do succeed? And what if this does end up being a really cool story about overcoming something? And so just kept my head down, kept working, kept utilizing the experience of other professionals on my team who were able to help me and give me good insight, and even come over and join me for meetings that I knew that they would make more of an impact with a certain doctor, because they had a certain style that might resonate. So it was a combination of utilizing just all the things I could get my hands on to try to turn my territory around. Long story short, ended up finishing at the very top of my district after that quarter. And I love sharing that, because I think it's such a cool story to show what hard work and what facing your hurdles with a different mindset can really do. And it does take a lot of grit and determination. But I think when we face those challenges and hurdles, that really exposes what we're made of, right? Like that really shows what we've got in us. It doesn't show our background of our degrees that we have or our achievements or our cool internships. It shows and exposes those things that make us who we are. It shows our character. It shows our work ethic. It shows our discipline. And I think as we're talking to you guys about all these things, you know, to put on your resume and to get experience in, I would encourage you all to develop those kind of skills, because those are things that employers look for. And those are the kind of hires that end up being the most successful, because they've got those innate skills of discipline, of hard work, that no matter what hurdle you're going to face, your odds are pretty good to overcome it, because you've got that stuff in you. So I would encourage you guys to fine tune those skills, as well as all the other things that we've been talking about.
Yeah, that really puts us at a good spot to wrap up this panel. I would love to hear from our panelists as we close. One big piece of advice you have for our guests today. So Miriam, kick us off, Kennedy, and then Jenn, you'll bring us home. Piece of advice.
My piece of advice would be, no matter how much education you get, how many years of experience experience you get, to just always keep learning. You know, if you get to a place where you're like, you know, oh, I've got this, or, you know, who are you to tell me to do this? I've been managing this territory or whatever it is for 20 years. I think that's kind of not the way to go about anything, considering, you know, we had the year of 2020 where everyone's world got shook and we all had to rethink what we thought was constant or consistent and normal. So I just say, always be looking to improve, to better yourself, and to learn, and then you'll just always be in a position to grow. That's my advice.
That's an awesome piece of advice. I think one of my biggest pieces of advice kind of ties into what I was just saying about being disciplined and focusing on the little things, and never get too far, just like you were saying, Miriam, I said your name wrong, I'm so sorry. Getting so far in your career that you forget to do the little things, and that you forget to be disciplined in the small areas that made you successful and got you where you are. So self-discipline, I would say, is something that is a big piece of advice that I was given that's helped me.
For me, a big thing is if you know better, do better. You know, don't settle or sell yourself short. And then your life is your responsibility. It's really important for you to, you know, take your path. The three of us can give you all the advice we want, but at the end of the day, it's your responsibility to make the best choices for you. You know your personal situation, you know yourself best. So you'll know what's going to be, you know, best coming out of college, you know, coming out for careers. I encourage anyone on this call to reach out to any one of the panelists today. If you want further information, we're available by LinkedIn. I've told Kertesha she can give my email out. But we encourage that. I mean, I'm sure I can speak for all three of us ladies in saying we probably wish we had someone at your age or your point in your careers to help us with some of the decisions you're trying to make. You know, so again, your life is your responsibility, and how you know, go about that and really work hard to get where you want to be is up to you.
Thank you all so much. I learned so much from this panel and our wonderful guests, and these are really great questions. Like I mentioned, this is being recorded, so you'll be able to review it and get more information as you need from our YouTube channel. And so check that out. You can also visit career.utk.edu to get my information, as well as see other resources and other events like this Career Conversations panel that'll be coming up in the future. So thank you again. Let's use those reaction buttons to give our panelists a round of applause, or you can clap in your video. I know that they would greatly appreciate that. I see in the chat some thank yous, but thank you all for coming. And if you have any questions or have any suggestions for the future, please let us know.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have an awesome day.